Are you used to being called governor yet?
It doesn't weird me out, but it's still a weird thing.
The hurricane season's right around the corner. They've changed leadership. Are you at all concerned that FEMA's not going to be ready if something strikes again?
I'm very much concerned. I'm very much concerned.
Would you have signed the House budget if that's the one that comes to you in July?
I probably would have. I mean, not to say that there were not real problems with the House budget.
All right, welcome on in to Tying Together with Tim Boyum. I am Tim Boyum here with producer extraordinaire John McHugh. How are you, John?
Howdy. Doing well. Can't complain.
All right, so this is the first time we're doing this on video, and we thought, why not bring in the governor of North Carolina?
Who better to start with?
I mean, who better to start with? What a great conversation. I'm sure people will want me to grill him on all kinds of things, but I like the podcast world to kind of get to know him a little bit. I thought it's a pretty fascinating conversation.
Yeah, really interesting conversation. I mean, so often these kinds of elected officials, you only get them in snippets.
Yeah.
And, they can come off dry or rehearsed. And it's, just hearing him talk about, his upbringing and his time in Africa. It's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating, amazing. 2 terms as Attorney General, 3 terms in the state Senate. Now the governor of North Carolina. Here is Josh Stein. Governor, first of all, it's so good to see you. You know, it's weird the older I get. I've interviewed you.
The grayer my hair gets.
We have as state senator,
yes.
As attorney general.
Yes.
And the more people I know for so long, they're now governor. And now here I'm calling you governor. Are you used to being called governor yet?
It doesn't weird me out, but it's still a weird thing.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a very informal person, and so I'm quite comfortable with people calling me Josh. But one thing that I don't think I had fully processed going into this is the respect and reverence people have for the office, just the institution of governorship. And it's been nice. And so I choose to just deal with it. It's not a hard task because what people are saying is, I respect this office and I fundamentally respect our democracy. And that's pretty cool.
So those that don't know, you live in a mansion now. The downstairs is essentially the store. The governor easily used to tell me like that. It was like living above the shop. The upstairs is the residence, right?
Yeah, it's essentially an apartment, and it's a very nice apartment.
Tall ceilings.
Very tall ceilings. But the downstairs, which is very much like a museum, is really incredible. It's a public space, and there are tours frequently. There are events that have nothing to do with me. They just are using the space. I do a lot of meetings there. So it has sort of a Grand Central Station vibe during the day, which makes it on the weekends really kind of very cool because, the security detail is always there. But other than them, there's no one in the house. And so it becomes very quiet. And
is that when the dogs run around downstairs?
That's when you see my dog Zoomies, because we'll have lunch out on the porch or something like that. And Lila in particular, she loves that big carpet. So she just takes off. So I sort of liken it to the nicest Airbnb anybody's ever stayed in.
Heck yeah, historical.
Yeah.
Have you gotten used to it? Was it weird waking up the first morning? Does it feel like home at all?
Well, the first morning was we stayed there in sort of mid-late January. We didn't move in till then, and it was when we were supposed to have the inauguration. So all our 3 kids, for us, unfortunately, they're out of state, so they're not with us day to day. They were all home, and so it was our first time there. That's why I was saying it was like this Airbnb. It was sort of like, let's go stay in that cool old house that's a mansion downtown. And I'm starting to get more used to it. We really just live in 3 rooms upstairs. There's a nice, comfortable TV room, a nice bedroom, and a nice bathroom. And that's where we spend the bulk of our time, actually.
How does it work for like food? I mean, can you ring a bell, they bring ice cream? What's it like?
There is a chef who cooks for all the people who work there. There are probably 20 or 30 people who do different things during the day. So there's food constantly, and I can just go and get food in line, sort of cafeteria style like everybody else. And what he'll do is he'll do a little package and put it in the fridge. So if come home and want some food, just stick it in the microwave, which is nice because I'm not a huge cook anyway.
Do you miss driving?
I steal away and drive on occasion.
Uh-oh.
The troopers are very tolerant of my need to keep my hands behind the wheel and foot on the gas, legally, of course. We live pretty close. Our house is close, and we go pretty frequently. We have a dog door there. We have a backyard that's fenced, so it's better for the dogs than the mansion, because the mansion, like I said, an apartment. So the dogs don't have the freedom to go in and out like they do at our house. So we'll go there, and last weekend I was out there power washing for a few hours. And
Really?
Yeah, it was so good. It was the most fun and gratifying and normal thing to do. So when I'm going back and forth, sometimes they'll let me drive.
Okay. Because I remember Governor Cooper had to buy a car, I think. I don't know if he's bought one yet.
Yeah.
But, all right. So you grew up in Chapel Hill.
Yes, sir.
What was Josh like growing up in Chapel Hill?
I bet I was pretty much of a rascal. I had good relations with my teachers, but I think it was one of those love-hate relationships because I was just very active, and I was a boy who didn't do great sitting in a desk for extended periods of time. But I was really interested and curious, talkative, really good friends, and I am very close to so many of them. Like routinely, once or twice a year, anywhere from a dozen to 18 high school buddies will get together and have a lot of fun. And we stay in touch all the time. It was nice because a lot of people who are from Chapel Hill go away, but they tend to come back to the area. And so, I'm in Raleigh, but a number of my friends are in Raleigh. Other friends are in Durham. Most of them are in Chapel Hill. But we see each other all the time. And just these close friendships, some of them I've now been friends with for 54 years.
Wow.
It's
so what do they think about their buddy being governor?
I think
do they make fun of you for it?
Yes, they chuckle immensely. They are not impressed.
Sounds like my kids with me being on TV. They could care less.
Yes, exactly.
You're a soccer player, right?
Yes, sir.
Technically a Hall of Famer soccer
Not
player?
Technically, actually. Yeah, this was, in fact, I've got a gripe with my communications director, Kate Schmidt, who's sitting here with us, because she scheduled her wedding the same time as the induction to the Chapel High Sports Hall of Fame happened. And so I was wearing a tuxedo at her wedding, and therefore I couldn't squeeze it in. So, but I had a number of friends who were there. Again, those guys, many of the friends I grew up with in the neighborhood were the same guys on the soccer team, and they went. And there was one high school in Chapel Hill in 1983, 84. I graduated in 84. We won in 83. And so we grew up playing little league soccer, rainbow soccer is what it was called in Chapel Hill. And then we played middle school, and then we played in high school, and we were pretty good. And now there weren't that many teams back then because it was the early 80s. So a lot of schools that now are great at soccer didn't exist, or they hadn't picked it up yet. So we were kind of early adopters, but we won a very dramatic state championship. We beat Sanderson, which was the dominant team in the 80s. We beat them in the semis, and then we beat Greensboro Page in the finals.
Wow. It's funny how those memories stick tight.
So I told you we were just together, all these high school buddies. I assure you that we talked about high school soccer on more than one occasion. So it's definitely a thing of glory days.
So your dad started the first integrated law firm in the state of North Carolina. Assuming that was before you were born, right?
Actually, no. I had been born. My dad went to college, didn't stick. So he joined the Army. He and my mom got married very young. So he did a few years in the Army. Then he came back and did college in New York, had my brother and sister. Then he did law school at GW in D.C., had me in his third year. So I'd been born, but then we moved to Charlotte, where he started working with Julius Chambers, and I was an infant. Chambers at that point was an African-American solo practitioner in Charlotte. He, in 1962, graduated from UNC Chapel Hill School of Law. He graduated as editor-in-chief of the Law Review and number one in his class, which for people who are in law school, they know that hardly ever happens, because if you're editor-in-chief of the Law Review, that is a full-time job, and then it becomes very hard to maintain the grades. But he was truly a remarkable, brilliant man. He could not get a job at a single law firm in North Carolina because he was black. He couldn't even go to his end-of-year law review banquet, of which he was editor, because it was held at an exclusive country club. So he was on his own doing his thing in Charlotte as a solo practitioner, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in New York was trying to strengthen and support these black lawyers in the South. and they would place an intern with them, and my dad got placed with Chambers, and it was just magic. They were perfectly compatible, and my dad had the time of his life. It was a summer internship, and then in 65, and we moved down here in 67, and it's been a perfect place to be ever since. So, but for Julius Chambers, I'm not a North Carolinian.
Wow. But that was tough, right?
It was tough for them. They completely insulated me from any of the
That's what I was going to ask.
Controversies. Yeah. I mean, it was tough because they were trying to integrate the South in the mid-'60s when it was the middle of Jim Crow. And a lot of people obviously wanted that to happen, but there were a lot of people who did not want that to happen, who didn't want black people at the same restaurants, who didn't want them playing in the same football game, who didn't want them going to the same school or swimming in the same swimming pool. And they had to go to court, and case by case by case, they had to win. And they had a great track record. They did incredible work on integrating public accommodations, on desegregating schools, on making sure that workplaces could not discriminate on the basis of race, on ensuring that everyone had equal voting rights in this democracy, because they did not then. And as a result, Chambers' car was firebombed in the middle of a speech in New Bern. His house was bombed. Their law office was firebombed, burned to the ground. So my mom used to get threatening phone calls at all hours of the night.
Do you have any memories of it?
No.
You don't?
No. I remember hearing about the office because that was so transformative, the fire. But I was like 4, so it didn't really mean anything. And my mom graduated from UNC Charlotte. She did math, which was unusual for women back then. And she went to do I forget what it's called, systems analyst something, but it was essentially computer science today at UNC to get her master's. And so we moved to Chapel Hill in 1971. And then that's why I grew up there, did my K-12 in Chapel Hill. And my dad moved, and he and Charles Beckton, another brilliant North Carolina lawyer, they opened up a branch of the law firm in Chapel Hill in the Triangle.
Did that influence you, though, once you heard those stories about what you were going to do and be when you got older?
I think so. It was less that those events happened. It was just more that I was raised by my parents that what you do is you try to fix things. If things are not the way they should be, if people are treated unfairly, if people do not have every equal opportunity to succeed and make a life for themselves, then you find some way to address that. And there are trillions of ways to do it. I mean, there are so many different ways to do it. They weren't pushing politics or anything. It was just, you find your way. And I found my way into politics, and honestly, government just suits me well. I like people, so I like talking to a lot of people. I have very wide interests in a lot of different issues. My brother, he was housing, and my sister was criminal justice, and they were both, deep dive on those issues. Mine were always broader, and so being able to work in government and work on, DOT reform or Hurricane Helene relief or education policy or energy policy, it's fun for me, and so I just ended up finding this path, and I think it's worked out well. It's a way for me to help people and to be constructive, productive, and it's a way for me to enjoy it.
One more quick youth story. So you ended up in Zimbabwe, right? You played soccer there too, right? But you were teaching?
I did, yes.
What was that experience like? Was it through one of the programs?
It was before the Peace Corps operated in Zimbabwe. There was a guy, an American man, who had been in Zimbabwe for 30 years. He lost his only son to a climbing accident. And so he created this small foundation to bring American college grads over to become teachers in Zimbabwe. I had studied in Kenya on a foreign study trip when I was in college, traveled to Zimbabwe after the program was over, and I was like, this place is really cool. And I met a couple young guys who were in this program. So I then went and met with the guy and applied my senior year. And when I finished, I said, let's go to Zimbabwe. And did end up doing it for a little over 2 years. And
wow.
Yeah, it was
How old were you?
Awesome. 20 to 22.
That's an influential time of life too,
It is. What I really appreciated was, well, first of all, when you're 20 or 22, you think you know a lot and you don't know everything you think you do. And so to go someplace where the rhythm of life, the way people interact, what they can, their material opportunities. It's just different from anything that we had been exposed to in the States. And it was great for me because I kind of learned to slow down. I learned to listen a little more. I learned to not insert myself into everything as much. And it was just tremendous. And the school I was at was very special because it was a school for disabled people who had fought in Zimbabwe's War of Liberation in the 70s. It used to be a white racist country, Rhodesia. The Zimbabweans had to go to war for 10 years to get their independence. And many of them were people, teenagers who went, they called it going into the bush, and they got disabled, they got shot up. And so this school was designed for them to come and get their high school degree, which is so essentially their GI Bill for disabled Zimbabwean vets. And my students were older than I was for the most part, because I was 21, and they were often 30 or early 30s, and they were motivated. Now, these were students who were like, this is my chance, and I want a better future. And so it just made it a really wonderful educational experience for them academically, and for me, life lessons.
Yeah. I've been watching, there's been so much Harvard news. You went to Harvard, you got your law degree there and a master's?
In public policy.
Is Harvard really hard? Like, we see and think it's like this huge, like, I can't even imagine how hard it must be to get in, let alone, or does it feel like college when you're there? Is it different?
Well, it's different than in college, just because when you're in graduate school, you are more sober.
That's true.
And more serious about learning. You're just older, more mature. So in that way, yes. I found both the Kennedy School of Government, which was the public policy, and the law school to be exceptional experiences. The quality, the caliber of people I was around, of my friend group, was just so inspiring. And people are really smart. There's smart people everywhere, but there are also a lot of smart people at Harvard. And to be around so many people who are so smart and so interested and so different and so curious and informed, it's challenging. And I think to challenge yourself is always a good thing, because that's how you get better. That's how you get stronger.
Is it weird watching all this stuff on the news?
It's just unfortunate because I just don't think what the president is doing is right. I don't think trying to chase away people who are brilliant from other countries who want to come to our institutions and learn, and then many of them realize how wonderful this country is and then want to contribute to its growth. I mean, if you look at the Fortune 500, how many of those companies were started by immigrants who had come to our universities? We have just been so, like, these green shoots just pop up when these wonderful, talented people come here. And I think targeting an institution based on speech is not what the president should be doing. It's just not a good idea.
So when did you meet the missus?
I met the missus on June 1st, 1993. It was the first day of our internship. You mentioned Mike Easley earlier. He was attorney general before he was governor. And after our first year of law school, she was at UNC, I was at Harvard. We interned for the AG's office. And I can remember the first day we're all sitting in this conference room, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, that's a pretty woman over there. And so we didn't have a chance.
Distracted on day one.
we didn't talk for about 3 weeks just because her internship was in a different building than mine. But I remember bumping into her on Fayetteville Street. And then our first date was June 26th, so 3 or 4 weeks later. We went out to Duke Forest and took a nice walk in the woods, and I think we were both smitten pretty much from then on.
It's pretty ballsy pulling out those dates like that, making sure you get them right.
I got them.
How about the proposal?
That was after, so we had 2 years of long distance, and that's not fun. I mean, it stinks. So we finished two years, second year, then third year. Then we both settled in Raleigh. We both took the bar exam, and then we celebrated by going on a trip. Neither of us had been to Hawaii, so we went out to Hawaii, and I thought that was an appropriately romantic location where to propose, and she said yes, fortunately.
And here we are.
Here we are.
So did she practice law then?
She did for many years. She was First, she was a law clerk. She clerked for Judge Joe John, who unfortunately passed last year, and she clerked for Judge Robin Hudson, who later became Justice Robin Hudson on the Supreme Court. So she had 2 great clerkships. She also practiced workers' comp law with Robin when Robin was in private practice between those clerkships. But her main part of her career was she did come home she stayed home with the kids for the kids when they were, Leah, I think when Leah got to kindergarten, so after about 10 years all in for the 3 kids, she went back and got her master's in public health, which had always been a dream. And then she became a public health lawyer for the state, which she did for about 12 or 13 years, doing things like addiction policy on opioids and tobacco cessation and marijuana policy and a jail health toolkit. She just was using the law and public health to try to help people live fuller, richer, healthier lives. She stepped down at the end of last year in anticipation of becoming First Lady. And it's not a surprise that she's got 2 or 3 initiatives. One has to do with reducing stigma of people with mental illness and substance use disorder. Another is reducing stigma of people doing prisoner reentry, folks leaving incarceration, which 96% of people in prison today leave. And so the question is, are they going to be successful, or are they going to revert back to a life of crime because doors of opportunities are closed to them? And she's about trying to open doors of opportunity. And then her third is rural tourism, because she loves the state and she loves to travel and loves to experience the great things that there are to offer.
Well, now she's got a challenge on that front with Western North Carolina.
She is going to be in North Wilkesboro early next week and doing some tourism stuff up there. I mean, what she and I know, because we've both been out there so many times, is that the vast majority of business in Western North Carolina is open. They're open. They want desperately for us to come there, to be tourists, to spend money, to go to a restaurant, to go to a craft shop, to buy a piece of art, to spend money and go stay in a hotel. So one thing I ask all North Carolinians, if you don't know what your summer vacation plans are and you got a long weekend or a week, please just choose a town out west you've never been to, and there are so many beautiful ones. Go out there, spend some money. You will have a blast, and you will help that community to recover.
Yeah, half the battle, I think, is going to be letting people know that they can, because it's just over and over and over, because a lot of people just think, oh, it's closed or whatever.
I mean, there are places like Chimney Rock, which just got beat down so bad, they're not fully open. But I was there last week, and there's a restaurant open. And so even though the town's closed, they still need people to come spend money. So yes, go out west, have a great time, spend money.
All right, speaking out west, FEMA, you put out your proposals recently too, and I know you've been disappointed about getting fully, the extension of the cost share. A lot of your changes that you've proposed, I feel like a lot of Republicans are proposing those changes too, and a lot of it's just getting things faster, right?
Yeah, I talked to Senator Tillis this morning, and he said that he was on board with the vast majority of my approach as well. It's about streamlining and reforming and improving FEMA, not eliminating it. The idea that each state can have on standby an infrastructure to respond to a massive natural disaster or disaster of any kind when it may only hit once every 5 years or 10 years. I mean, North Carolina, we get more than our fair share, but a lot of states, they don't get hit every year.
Yeah.
And so it's just frankly ludicrous to think every state is going to have this existing capacity just standing by to turn on when a storm hits. That's not the case. However, there are disasters that hit the United States every year. That's why we have a national federal response. And when these storms hit, they don't come and hit one storm, they hit an entire region. That's why we have a national government. So my view is that we need FEMA. FEMA can be better. It can be more agile. Right now, it has been tied down by law so that, for instance, when they come in, if a house is destroyed and you have damage and you need to fix your roof, they can give you money, $40,000 to fix your roof, but you can't improve it. You can only bring it back to the standard where it was before. Then you have to wait a year, and hopefully you then qualify for a program under HUD, CDBG-DR, disaster recovery, and then you can get money to improve it. So it's the same sort of source of money. It's federal money. It's just two different programs with different rules and different timelines. So it ends up taking much longer, and it's much more expensive to the taxpayer. That was one of our proposals, is let's allow FEMA to fund housing repair and improvement, not just getting it back to a baseline.
The hurricane season's right around the corner. They've changed leadership. Are you at all concerned that FEMA's not going to be ready if something strikes again?
I'm very much concerned. I'm very much concerned. The staff at the regional level has been very constructive. We've had routine calls with them, routine exchanges. They've been helpful. The previous administrator, he and I had a regularly scheduled call every 2 weeks. And I'll tell you one of the proposals another proposal I had was so that cities and counties can get a block grant on the front end, spend the money on the infrastructure repair, and then show their invoices and refund or get more money as needed. Just do a true up at the end. The way it works now is the local government gets approved for the expenditure, they spend the money, and then they have to wait months for reimbursement. So it just kills these local governments from a cash flow perspective, because two things have happened. One, they're spending a lot more money on everything because they're having to respond to the disaster. And two, their revenues are declining because people are moving out of town. The businesses aren't getting sales tax. So it is a double whammy for local governments. They're desperate to get reimbursed by FEMA. We had this routine where we were going through a list of what the outstanding invoices were, and FEMA was systematically checking off those lists. We don't have those calls anymore. So I am concerned.
I want to be respectful of your time because I know we only got so much time left. So one more topic before we get to some fun questions at the very end. The budget. It's been a tumultuous time over the last several years trying to get one done. You're pretty, I don't want to use the word supportive, but, of the House budget compared to the Senate budget. Would you have signed the House budget if that's the one that comes to you in July?
I probably would have. I mean, not to say that there were not real problems with the House budget, but the House budget did two really important things. One, they recognized we must pay our teachers better. The number one factor in school success for students is the quality of the teacher in the classroom. We have the second lowest starting teacher pay in the entire Southeast, lower than every state that borders us. It just was with a friend this weekend whose son graduated from Appalachian State, school teacher, wanted to stay in North Carolina. He's gone to Charleston, South Carolina. South Carolina is paying their starting teachers substantially more than we do in North Carolina. Honestly, it's a disgrace. My budget called for raising starting teacher pay to the highest in the Southeast. The House did not quite get where I was, but they came pretty daggone close. And so I really respect what they were doing. And they also rewarded veteran teachers as well, which is obviously important to keep teachers on the job. The second thing that the House did is they didn't accept my proposal. We just got our revenue numbers back. Expected revenues for this year and next year, it's about $400 million less combined than what we had anticipated. And the numbers next year were essentially almost below flat. 2 years from now, expected revenues were $800 million shortfall. We need to make sure that we have enough revenue to meet the demands of a growing state. North Carolina is the third fastest growing state in the country after Texas and Florida in terms of the number of people coming here since the last census. So we are fast growing. Inflation is real. It hits on people's pocketbooks. It hits government. And in fact, when you look at the two major expenses of state government, it's education and healthcare. Those things are growing at higher rates of inflation than the normal CPI, Consumer Price Index. So we need to make sure we have enough money just to stay where we are, let alone try to invest more in teachers and more in healthcare and more in infrastructure, more in hurricane relief and all the things that we know that we need to do. I said, let's freeze the taxes where they are because there are some pre-programmed tax cuts that are going to take out of the budget about $10 billion over the next 4 years. I said, just freeze them where they are. Let's see where we are. We're in this uncertain federal environment where they're cutting back on things and we're going to have to pick up the price. We've got these natural disasters we have to respond to. We've got a growing population. The economy is a little bit sketchy right now. Do we really want to have these tax cuts happen when we might be going into a recession? I said freeze them. The House didn't agree with me. What the House said was we're going to keep these tax cuts in the law the way that they are, but we're going to make these triggers realistic. We're going to tie them to population growth and to inflation so that if we end up doing better than what we think we are in terms of the revenues, then we will institute the tax cut. But we're not going to institute a tax cut if we don't have this baseline growth of revenues. Prudent. It's not my approach, but it's prudent. The Senate is beyond, because they not only keep the existing tax cuts, they add more tax cuts. And understand, I'm pro-tax cut. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't like paying taxes. I don't like paying sales tax. I don't like paying property tax. I don't like paying income tax. But I know we need roads. I know we need school teachers. I know we need a healthcare system that works for everybody. I know we have these critical investments that government needs in order to provide a baseline service so that we remain an attractive place to raise a family and grow a business. I don't think the Senate meets that standard. I did think the House did.
I know you're not going to put it on the table here, but is there a red line then for when the final budget comes to you?
We need to have a budget that rewards educators to strengthen our public schools, that meets the needs of Western North Carolina, and that has fiscal prudence ingrained in it.
Okay. In the audio world, we're going to take a quick break. On YouTube, we're going to keep going. So, Governor, 2 quick questions here before we let you go here. I heard murmurs from Republicans that you called pretty much every Republican lawmaker when you got in office and talked to them individually. Is that true?
I don't know if I got to every single one of them, but I talked to a lot of them, and I talked to a lot of the Democrats too. I want to make sure that there are open lines of communication between me and the legislature. Our ability to get things done for North Carolina, which is my driving goal, I want to get good things done for people, depends on a healthy, constructive relationship between the General Assembly and the executive branch. So I'm trying to do my part, and I've been very gratified by the response, and we're going to keep going, and I want to keep building positive, constructive relationships. I want to keep delivering for North Carolina.
All right, couple quick few fun notes. Music. What's on your Spotify, your iPod, whatever you do? What's the top of the list?
I'm somebody who's kind of stuck in the 80s and 90s because they were great decades. So you got Bruce Springsteen, Bruce Hornsby, U2, Coldplay. But I'm also trying to broaden my mind, and I got a 23-year-old son who's pretty hip into all music. So he's got me into Mount Joy, which I like very much. Avett Brothers, of course, they're super cool. So I'm trying to broaden my horizons.
Oh, very good. But I 90s on Spotify or on XM is like one of my favorite channels. But it's when we are growing up or influential period. How about, do you get a chance to watch TV at all?
We do, not as much as I might enjoy, but we do.
You got a streamer favorite?
My problem is I cannot even remember.
You probably don't have time now, do you? Like, what do you do to unwind?
Well, I go to Hurricanes games. That's why my voice is a little scratchy.
Jeez.
But there won't be any more of those
for a few months.
I'm a huge sports nut. So that is a welcome diversion. There was a great show that I watched with Anna in January, February called Bad Monkey. And I don't even know what streaming service was on. It was Vince Vaughn, as sort of a down and out cop in South Florida. It was very charming.
Okay. Well, Governor, I could ask you a million questions, but I know you got to go. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Tim, awesome.